and welcome back to the BOPS podcast. Today we're back in the Solano Community College TV studio, and I'm here, and my name is Tianeh, and I'm here with my co-hosts Dime, Maryan, and Bria. And today I will be talking about the academic aspects of the first-gen experience living in America. And so I just want to start off this episode by asking everyone about their relationship with school and I guess like how that relationship formed. And so I'm going to go first. And in my life, school is something that is really important to me. And I really value school. And I think that really has to do with how I grew up and the emphasis that my parents put on school. Because in my family, going to college is how you become successful. It's basically the only path. You got to go to college. You can't not go to college. And it's just so that's how I've been brought up, and that's how I guess I perceive academia right now. And that's also how I wish to. Anyways. Dime, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. So it was kind of weird with education. It was always the expectation that I was super smart and well-performing in elementary and middle school, and then I'd go off to college and all that stuff and be super, awesome and successful. And I was kind of I don't want to say pedestal child, but I was the easy child, I guess, because it was they perform well in school. And then compared to my brothers, they had their own physical disabilities and even learning disabilities that caused them to just, we're hoping that they graduate, but they're probably not gonna be the most successful person in the world. And I don't want to hold my brothers to that standard because that's unfair to them. But I've always been seen, at least by my mom, that that's the child that's gonna succeed and grow up. It kind of fumbled in 2020. COVID had a huge impact on how I view school, and also mental illness affected how what's the right wording for this, how much I enjoyed school and then my dedication towards school. And just in general that kind of disconnect, and I started not caring for school, so I'm trying to fix that.
That's great.
Similar to you, Tianeh, my parents also put a really big emphasis on school. Do I enjoy school? I can't say that I do. But I try my hardest to succeed, because at the end of the day, college is my only option for me as well. And I have academic aspirations that require me to go to college and furthermore go through more schooling. School is very important for me.
I will say that school is also extremely important for me as well. I believe that, I kind of lost my passion for school, because I know at some point I did like school, but I think it was around maybe 2016, I think it was August of 2016, when I kind of realized that I was only getting good grades to appease my parents. And I realized that I wasn't really making any goals for myself. My academic goals were only for my parents, and I'm like, oh wait, what am I striving for? And for a long time, I just kind of was being drifted along, so to speak, just going with the flow, not really knowing what I was doing with my life academically. And then recently, I was given the opportunity to go to a really good school that I believe I would enjoy. And so while I definitely know I don't enjoy school now, I do have academic goals that I'm striving for. So that's what's keeping me going to work hard at the moment.
And I think you brought up a really great point about academic validation and how that kind of circles back to your parents. Because personally, like Maryan was saying, I don't enjoy school that much, but the pleasure I get from academic validation keeps me going. When I see that I get an A on a test, I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm gonna keep working so I get another A on the test, and I'll eventually get an A in the class, and that just keeps me going. But the question is, do I really do it for myself, or do I do it for the grade? That's
Agreed. I think there's satisfaction in like seeing your to-do list, especially in Google Classroom. It has the to-do, and I love just turning those in. But it's unfortunate for there's Google Classrooms that I can't leave, and they give me assignments, and then my brain's like, "You have something to do." I was like, "I literally don't. That's something I can't even leave, and unenroll in that class, and it's to do." And then those numbers pile up. And I was like, I don't have 6 missing assignments. Those were just stuff I couldn't do. I probably do have some missing assignments for stuff that I do have to do, but like, who was it? Jacob was, or our friend Jacob, name dropping, looked over at my computer and was like, "That's a lot of missing assignments." I was like, most of this stuff is like the volunteer hours we are supposed to submit and other random stuff that I just don't have to do. Like, even if like I do want to submit my volunteer hours, which I plan to, like, that assignment isn't quite necessary.
Going off of what Tianeh said about academic validation and doing stuff to appease your parents and like to get that one grade you want, actually I find that very interesting, because while academic validation is a good thing, I feel like there's a lot of downsides. I mean, personally for me, I really try hard in school because I want my parents to be proud of me, and growing up I felt like I could only get their approval through doing good in school, and because of that I feel like that really turned my aspect on school as like, I'm not trying to learn to get knowledge, I'm trying to learn to pass this test, which is not good at all, because since I have academic aspirations of wanting to be somebody in the medical field, I can't forget everything I learned. So
Right.
I need to like change that mindset of like studying and learning to pass a test. I have to change that and try to learn and study so I could further become wiser.
I mean,
Yes.
when you think about it, like, I think all 4 of us, like, our parents were a big key in how we see, like, how we approach academics, for better or for worse. And I mean, like, me personally, I know, like, it's the topic of conversation is like as a first gen, but like my family, we're not first gen. We've been our family has been here for generations, but very recently people started going to college and like finishing school and stuff like that. And both my grandmother and my father went to UC Berkeley. I think my grandma majored in computer science because everyone did, and then I think my dad majored in mathematics or something. I think it was something like that because he became a teacher later. And so for them, it was just like one piece of it was like, we want you to go to UC Berkeley to continue the family line. Another part of it was like, see our episode about race, but as you know, a young Black woman, you need to be able to set yourself apart in the human marketplace, I guess you could say, for jobs. Like, you need to be able to be educated, you need to be able to be worldly, you need to have good connections, and all that starts from having a good education. And so, like, my parents, and especially my grandma and my dad, they really put it hard on me. You need to get good grades, you need to get good grades. And I remember at the time, I didn't realize how much it affected me or how much it hurt me, but like when I would show them like my A's or whatever, A pluses on like my progress reports, they would be like, well, yeah, that's what I expected of you. And they say it's a compliment. They mean it as a compliment. Like, oh, I always knew you were smart. But when you're a kid and you're always told like, yeah, that's just what you're supposed to do, when inevitably you get out of the gifted and talented program, like you feel like, oh my God, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing anymore. Like, am I suddenly dumb? And it's like, no, the school is just harder now. But you've learned, or well, I had learned that I was supposed to be getting a certain grades. And we talk about this in, I want to say English or sociology. We also talked about it in CR, fixed and growth mindsets. And I feel like all the way my parents came at me about my grades and stuff really led to me having a fixed mindset when it came to school, which I'm just now trying to work out of now that I realize what it is.
And going off of what you were saying, Bria, I think, at least for me personally, the reason why like my parents just like expect A's is because like they understand the dichotomy between like the American education system and like for example, the Iranian education system. Because like let's just make a general statement. Education systems outside of the US are a lot more rigorous and a lot more fast-paced than they are here. Like when my dad moved here, like in ninth grade, he had already learned all of the calculus that he was expected to know, and like as a senior. So like right now, like his expectation is like, oh, your schooling year is like so easy, like why wouldn't you do well? Like when I was your age, I was like taking like 8 classes. I was at school from like 9 to 5 and I was fine. So I think it's just like they're like, you have it easier because I made your life easier, so there's no reason why you shouldn't succeed.
Right.
Yeah, and going off of that, since both our parents are immigrants and they did go through the schooling system outside of America, which many people like to joke that the American school system is easy, but I feel like they can't really put that upon ourselves because we never experienced any other type of school system.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, to us, this is hard. There's, I mean, I haven't experienced anything else, so I can't say if anything else is harder because this is all that I've gone through. And so I find that argument to be stupid.
And I feel like that's fair. It's when people outside, because like people say our education system is easy or bad or whatever, but then when you think about it, people come from all around the world to come to specifically California to get to go to our colleges, and it's like, well, we must be doing something right. Speaking of which, it is so crazy to me that we as I don't want this to, I don't mean this in the way it might sound, but it kind of sucks how we as Americans/Californians, people who live here, were born here, have a hard time trying to get into the schools that are in our state, or like that we're,
Public schools that our tax money goes to.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet we're being passed up by people who are from out of state and from out of country. Like I think it's really difficult for us to like, or let me speak for myself. It's very difficult for me to see that, or it was very difficult for me to see that, because it's like, not only do I have to compare myself to the peers that I see every day academically, but now I'm having to compete with kids from all around the world. And it is always shocking to me that people get into college ever with how many people apply every year. I mean, if we just talk about the UC acceptance rates, they are literally insane.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate how limited education is. Like, I am very against high tuition rates, and I'm very against, like, I just wish it was more accessible to people, even from the beginning, even like elementary school. I hate that more well-performing schools get more money from the government.
It's because the way that they zone the funding for schools is by property value, and the higher your property value is, the more funding.
Which is so unfortunate, because then there's schools that could have really bright students, but they're not given the materials that they need, and those materials can be textbooks, and those materials can be something like a pencil. And it's unfortunate. I think our schooling system in the U.S. is so
Flawed.
It's flawed, yeah, because like teachers have to pay for their own supplies, which I think is stupid.
That blew my mind. I did not know teachers had to pay for their own
They have to
supplies.
pay-
out of
It's
pocket.
not just that. Our country does not value teachers like other countries
No.
do. Like, honestly, these days, kids don't respect their teachers. Like, if you would go to another country, you could not talk back to a teacher. They would, like, slap you.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's not a, like, you can't, like, it's just the way that we view, like, professors and teachers. Like, we just don't respect them as much.
I've seen a lot of it today, like in recent years, especially after COVID, because that had a huge effect in quarantine. A lot of younger parents, kind of conflicted with that wording, some of them see their teachers for their children as like daycare. And that's, my child's being disruptive, that's a problem for you to figure out. But that is a teacher watching over 26 to 30 to 40, maybe even 50 children.
Yeah.
And their responsibility is to teach your children how to do things and to help them be social, but that's also something that parents have to do. And it's unfortunate that that's kind of the way that, like, society is going. I used air quotes. I don't know. That was probably not the right
Society.
It was probably not the right. It's actually just fake.
Yeah.
/J.
I feel like parents should take more responsibility for their kids.
Mhm.
I mean, and TikTok is not a reputable source, but
Right.
it is, people do use it a lot to show their lives.
And opinions.
So, right,
It
so it
gives
is valuable
personal
in that
insight
way.
beyond just like academic insight.
Right, and so like when a young teacher gets on TikTok crying her eyeballs out, saying that, she's just so tired because kids are, not only just disrespecting her, but disrespecting each other. There was a video, I believe I talked to, I think it was you, Dime, about this, where there was this, I believe it was a preschool or kindergarten, young kids, way too young kids, yeah. And she was saying that they were making inappropriate jokes
And noises.
and making inappropriate noises in class and referencing games and movies and stuff that they should have no idea about in her class. And she was saying that kids, even 5 years ago, weren't like this. Kids in that, like, middle schoolers are kind of known for that kind of behavior when they're starting to not really understand inappropriate things, but they can probably peripherally see it now.
Right.
Yeah.
But kids, like, these were like 5-year-olds, you guys. And I really don't know what happened during the COVID years, but a lot of parents dropped the ball, and kids are just crazy now. And it's so sad to see that these teachers are literally tearing their hair out about something they can't even control.
And I feel bad for the children too.
Me too.
Because no children should have access to that sort of information. And at least in my opinion, I don't think children should have like access to sexual things. I think it's important to learn about like sex because it is a part of life, but
Not at 5.
you have to. It has to be limited information, I think, and there's a lot of things. Because it's one thing to learn about sex, but it's another thing to like learn about porn.
It shouldn't be brought up
First
unless the
grade and
kid is like asking like specific questions, you know?
Right.
Like it shouldn't just be like, okay, we're just gonna talk about this. Like,
Yeah.
no.
It all depends on context. Because again, it's different to learn about like the reproductive system in school, and it's another thing to see like a movie scene. And it's just like there's just such a lack of restraint on people like watching what their kids are doing. I mean, YouTube was up in arms with creators not too long ago because, parents were letting their kids just run wild on YouTube and see things that they weren't supposed to see. And I mean, no wonder these kids are growing up not caring about school or being crazy and stuff. They're watching people like Jake Paul telling them that teachers suck and you should be learning how to drive a Bugatti or whatever that song is about.
I know what
Not
you're
just
talking
that,
about.
like all the new like I guess kids shows or whatever on Disney are all like surrounded around social media. Like all the people on the shows like use social media. They're like, oh my god, TikTok, like
Right.
they're not normal
And-
kids.
And I know Cocomelon was under fire because what it's doing is it's appealing the most to like dopamine receptors and stuff in kids by showing them bright colors and a lot of movement, but then their attention span is decreasing so much. And there were kids who were like 3-4 years old who weren't even starting to speak because they grew up on Cocomelon, and that it was just like something that was supposed to be made for kids was actually ruining their ability to learn. And also last week I saw a TikTok video, again, not a reputable source, and I didn't look into this, so grain of salt.
Yeah.
But the peripheral vision of children is decreasing because they're so used to looking at their phone all the time. As they're growing up and developing, that the peripheral vision is shorter. My peripheral vision is like flat, like to my face. Not the most impressive, but like I can see things next to me without having to actually churn or look with my eyes. And it's unfortunate that like something that's part of being a human and like being able to see things, like I mean actual human, like on a biological level, not just social norms as a human, like you can't see in your peripheral vision, that's going to have huge effects on major things like driving in the future. Hopefully driving isn't such a huge thing in the future because it's actually really bad.
It will be.
It is. But it's really bad for the environment. But even then, you can't see next to you. That's insane to me.
Going off of what you were saying about the attention span thing, that's like honestly like now that you bring it up, like even my attention span,
Right.
now that like TikTok has become a big thing, is like completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like nowadays, like I don't have like the the patience to like sit down and watch a whole movie unless I'm like with somebody.
And you
like
have to do something.
yeah, and I
as
have
you
to do
it.
something while I do it. Like my brain has to constantly be entertained, and that's just happening to me like now as a teenager. Imagine like these kids like who are going through like the like peak stages of development having to do that like that's just how they are.
That's so funny that you bring it up because today when I was watching on my computer a show, 20 minutes, I was scrolling through my phone
That's what
because
I
I
did
get
too.
bored.
I'll have solitaire on one tab, YouTube on another, while I'm playing, like waiting for my game on the TV to load. Like,
So
and
it's
it's
just like
right.
we have to constantly be stimulated,
It's
and it's
crazy.
just so wow. I didn't even think
I-
about that.
constantly, like, I have to have music to focus on things,
Yeah.
partially because if I'm in a classroom, there's so much, it's either too much noise or too little noise to be able to focus. And if I'm listening to songs I already know, my brain is already like, that's just happening in the background. And that helps me to focus. But there's other things where it's like, there's constantly noise. Yesterday I was like, oh, let me turn on, I was eating food. I was like, let me turn on YouTube or something. I think YouTube's better than scrolling on TikTok because it's
Yeah.
like at least a 10-minute video
Yeah.
about the same thing. TikTok is insane. It's
Yeah.
crazy. The other day at work during my 10, this was like the nicest break, 10 as in 10-minute break, nicest break I ever had because it was like the sun wasn't setting, but it was like close enough to the mountains and it was cloudy, but like in the way where the sun still breaks through and you can see it. And I just turned on music, didn't go on my phone for almost the entire 10 minutes, and I just sat there and relaxed. And I got back and I was like, that was so nice and relaxing. And that's something that like kids don't
Do anymore?
get.
I really wonder how the workforce is going to look in 20 years, or like, I'd say let's 30 years, when we're like stable in the force and we're watching like the people who are much younger than us being trained and stuff like that. I really wonder how it's going to look, because I know that like our like the seniors, like this age group, we're still, I'd say like our class, I guess that's the word, our class is still like, this sounds bad, but like we're the last ones, we're the last good ones.
Because
I've seen so much
Yeah.
hate towards like class of 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, screw 'em.
Saying how they're crazy.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say like they are crazy and they're not crazy because I don't know. But they're just, it's crazy how much of a difference there is between 1 year. And I've heard a lot of things about like, it was happening 2021, 2022 when a lot of people around our age were finally getting jobs and stuff, and there were people already established like working. I saw a video about Starbucks where this older person, not like super old, like 20s, was talking about how their younger coworker who was in high school wasn't doing anything. And there's one thing, like you're paid minimum wage, so minimum effort, but that, like, you're screwing over your coworkers at some point. And I just don't get that work ethic of doing absolutely nothing. And I have coworkers who've shown up late without a care in the world. If I'm going to be 5 minutes late, I still call. If there's traffic, if I get stuck in the school traffic because I live right next to a school, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be a little late. And
Yeah, and not even just like that. Like, I feel like my younger sibling, they're in their first year of, I want to say high school. Naya, don't kill me if I don't remember. But I think they're in their
she
first
makes
year
a
of high school.
reappearance.
And like, love you, girl, but the stuff that
Get
they're
exposed.
doing and talking about, I'm like, oh my lord, like that's the kind of stuff that I heard that high schoolers were doing when I was in middle school.
Kids
Or
are
I guess they
maturing.
technically are high schoolers, but it's just, it feels different. They're younger high schoolers.
And also it's different because
Yeah.
it's your sibling.
That's true.
Yeah.
When I have, it's Maryan and I's mutual friend, and I grew up with him in preschool, but they're a grade below us, and for the longest time, I couldn't get it out of my head that they're like, I couldn't get it out of my head that they're younger than me. Even though we're like a year apart, we're very similar, and at the point where we are in high school, our brains are somewhere around the same level, but there's still that's a younger person. They shouldn't be doing those things. I was doing those things.
Yeah,
But
but
they
it's just
shouldn't be.
different.
Yeah.
But you were talking about like middle school, like you were thinking of high schoolers doing things. I am still shocked about it. The amount of people I know who started like smoking in middle school is crazy.
It is crazy.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's just
It's not
We're
just
just
crazy,
doing
it's
all that
sad.
stuff.
it's sad.
Smoking,
Yeah,
drinking.
I know a person, and they are a lovely person, and I love them, and they're really cool. They regret that they started smoking in middle school, and it's unfortunate
Because your brain's still
'cause-
developing.
Yeah, and it's like nicotine, it's an addiction.
Yeah.
And you have to
Yeah.
fight it. And there's so many people who just don't have the resources to fight it.
Drugs are so rampant in schools.
It's crazy.
And it's crazy. It
Even
is
just-
so
It's
the
everywhere.
access. How? First of all, how do these kids even get it? I don't know. But the amount of access that we have to drugs should not be okay.
It's crazy. Like we knew a kid who was addicted to cocaine, and I'm like, where on earth are you getting cocaine?
Exactly.
Like, who is
And it's
supplying
not
you?
just
Exactly.
Yeah.
some of our audience members might think, oh, it's just because they're in California. It's California as well. I have a friend in Illinois who's the same stuff is happening. The same stuff. And she lives in a small town. So it's not even just we happen to live in a town with more than 500 people.
If
and
you
then
know the
that gives
right
us easy
people,
access.
You can
you
get
can get it.
And like, obviously, it's hard enough to want to care about school when you're dealing with like emotional issues or like school is hard.
Yeah.
But imagine that you're literally in class like, I need to get out of here. I need to do like take the next hit. Like I need to like I can't even like I empathize with my friends, my brothers and sisters who are struggling with that kind of stuff because I can only imagine what they're going through. Like that must be horrible. And I mean,
It's scary.
kids don't just get drugs.
No.
Those are coming from some adult somewhere. And that just leads me back to like I feel like adults and parents are just like there were so many people have been let down because there's no way that kids would have the access to to vapes and drugs and stuff like that if there wasn't some adult in their life somewhere.
Did you see, there was a TikTok video, I haven't seen it, but I've seen a lot of people talk about it. This lady handed her, like, I think it was a 19-month-old baby, her vape, and it, like, hit the vape. Because, of course, it's a child.
Right.
A thing that looks vaguely like a nipple, you're going to put it in your mouth.
Anything they're going to put in their mouth.
Literally.
That person should be in jail.
Right.
Like,
That's child neglect.
Abuse.
Like, there's been parents who get like arrested for their own drugs that their children like get. Like I've seen stories of this child who the day before the incident happened, they had like a drug assembly and it's like, this is what drugs look like and this is bad. And then the kid brought his parents like weed to school. Be like, look, my parents have it.
the thing
And it
is,
was
like, yeah, we have these assemblies like, oh, don't do drugs, don't do drugs. But the thing is, the administrations of these schools don't really do anything to like
Fight it.
stop any of it.
Right.
Right. And I mean, there's also so much because like
There's only
parents
so
will
much
send their
you can
kids to school to watch the don't do drugs assembly, and then the kid will come home and the parents smoking on the couch.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Right.
it's just like there's so many just loose ends that just need to be
Right.
fixed.
Well, I mean, while parents do play a big part in this whole, like, I guess, drug
Ring.
debacle.
Drug
Drug debacle. I feel like also at the same time, it's the people at school and peer pressure.
Yeah.
Because I know, I'm sure, I would hope most parents wouldn't want their kids getting caught up in drugs. But if you hang out with the wrong people
Yeah.
at the wrong time,
At the wrong
Yeah.
age.
Not
It's
even
like,
just drugs. Who people hang like, again, going back to like younger siblings and the kids they're at school with, like, a good kid will easily change into a bad one.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about any of my
With their
siblings, of
kids.
course, but I'm just saying in general.
Their friends.
Siblings, terrible.
But like, it is crazy to me watching young people like just get in with the bad group, and it's like all of a sudden they're rude, they don't care about school, they're talking back to their parents, and it really, because you could come from a good home, but then if you have friends who have so much influence over you, it's just like a switch. You're just a different person all of a sudden,
and
which is really scary to me, honestly.
Yeah.
My biggest turnoff of like smoking Nick, because I'm gonna be honest, it is tempting because it's like fruity little flavors and it's fun. It looks fun to like you can do tricks with it.
Yeah.
But my biggest turnoff, not to encourage that. Sorry.
Yeah. Don't smoke.
Don't smoke. We've done this before. Last year there was this group chat that I was in on Snapchat with my friend and then a couple of her friends from the other high school near us, and this one girl left her, she was a sophomore at the time, she left her vape at my friend's house or in her car or something, and so she didn't have it. And this girl got so mad about it, and she was like, it was just crazy to watch, and she's like, I need it, and that just was the biggest turn off of like, I don't want to experience that. And no, that's not my thing to talk about, sorry. And it's just like, that's so unfortunate that that's what they experience. Like, I feel pity for them.
It's sad.
Because it's an addiction and it can be crippling. I'm lucky that, like, my mom, she grained it into my head, like, don't do drugs. One of the things that stuck in my head, she said, if you get, like, into addictive substances and it's like ruining you, I'm kicking you out of the house, because I'm not gonna let you ruin your brothers, because that's unfair to them. And if you go down that hole, that's your hole to climb out of. And I'm sure my mom would be more than happy to assist me emotionally and like at least try to help me. But if I'm not putting into that effort either and just letting myself fall down that rabbit hole of addiction and substances, like, she's not gonna let me have that potential. And it's unfortunate that so many, you were talking about friend groups, or you were talking about friend groups? Talking about friend groups. A lot of people are, I know people who, like, they found stuff that their dad or mother had, and they're like, like this thing, let's smoke it, let's do whatever. And then because their friend's doing it, they start doing it. And it's just a wave of people.
That also has to do with how, like, teenagers are just portrayed in movies.
Right.
Because there's this one specific show that I watched, I'll just say it, Ginny and Georgia. It portrays these teenagers as smoking every night, don't really care about school, they're going to parties, like, drinking, they're doing all this stuff. When in fact, like, most teenagers
aren't like that, but there are teenagers
like that. But the assumption that all teenagers are like that just pushes the narrative.
It's also, it's like twofold. It's like a double-edged sword, because on one hand, I feel like some kids might see that and then think that's what they're supposed to be doing, and then maybe that'll lead them to get it. But on the other hand, I feel like that scares parents, and then those parents go to their kids and demonize drugs and stuff. And demonizing drugs makes some kids want to do them more.
Right.
And so it's like, now that their parents like, don't do this, and it's like, I think I'm gonna do that. Like, just the natural rebellious teenager brain, like, a parent says no, your brain says yes, and you're gonna most kids are like, I'm just gonna listen to my brain. And so it's like, shows like that are just so not great in their messaging and stuff, like that one. And then also there was another one, I'll just say it, 13 Reasons Why, which it was the double-edged sword, where on one hand it was romanticizing the mental, struggles of the girl who was going through it and the actions she took to, like, teenagers, and then also it was fear-mongering to parents. And it's like, it's just, I really don't know if,
and it doesn't provide any resources to help people,
right? Or
it
any
just
moral,
shows
really.
it.
It's like, here's this horrible thing.
Their
Watch it.
5-second warning in the beginning.
It's like society expects us to consume such, like, horrible things, like especially at like our age and people younger than us, they expect us to consume that information and just be like okay afterwards.
Right, like we're not supposed to know what to do with that.
Yeah.
It's like second graders being showed 9/11 videos.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like I've seen so many people like talking about that, and that's scarring. Obviously, I think it's important to learn about, but there's also been so many other disasters that have happened, even on American soil, that we just don't even talk about, just because.
In my opinion, I don't think you need to show the actual video to understand the message.
Definitely
I
not
think
underage kids.
There's so many better ways you could talk about it than showing a graphic representation, because first of all, it's just gonna scar them, and second of all, it's not adding anything to their like understanding of the event. It's just showing some like tragedy.
There's a big flaw in people thinking that they're informing kids about the dangers of things, when they're really just showing them what happened. Like, if we think about like drug things, I see a lot of I forget the corporation that's doing it, but they're anti like nicotine, and like you'll get metal in your lungs. That's metal in your lungs. Like that's funny to me. That's a funny way of talking about it, but that doesn't tell me not to smoke. I mean, technically it does, but it doesn't actually get the message across. It's just like that's kind of funny. Why would you? That's entertaining, kind of.
I mean,
I just wanted to say one thing. Going back to the whole like depiction of like tragedies, or like for example 9/11. I love how history books, especially the history that we learn, like to show us very graphic representations of like POC and like all those like altercations to like
flashbacks to 10th grade history.
Yeah, Maryan
not
knows
10th grade, 11th
grade.
Ooh.
But like they
Oh,
don't really
right. Oh my
they don't
God.
really explain like the like reasoning, or like give any like I guess like what's the word
scarring.
description of it. They just show us these things and it's like, oh, this happened, okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Like
And it's like,
it's just very sad.
it almost feels sick in a way.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, oh my God.
Last year
I
when we
forgot
were
about those
seeing
videos.
photos of those slaves having like their beating marks.
oh god,
Yeah.
I almost
Oh
I
my
was legit
God.
about to cry in class. Maybe it's because like I don't know, I'm black.
because
But-
it's traumatic.
For context, we were watching videos specifically about what was slavery and like being black in early America,
What was his
in the
name?
early U.S.
the one who was drowned because he was flirting with a white
Oh my
Oh,
god.
Emmett Till.
Emmett Till.
Emmett
Yeah.
Till.
We
There's a
saw
movie about that?
actual
Yeah.
videos and pictures of those things. I
his
remember
corpse.
seeing trigger warning, but I remember seeing like a slave who had a whole bunch of scars on his back from being whipped. Like we got no preparation for that.
It's like
It
8
is
in the
10 in the morning.
morning.
I was like, I've barely woken up. I'm 5 seconds away from falling asleep. And we just see that. And that doesn't teach me anything.
Right.
Except, like, it shows us the horrors that happened, which is terrible.
That even isn't the beginning
But
of
that's, like, that doesn't even, like, encapsulate all the horrors that people
Yeah.
went through.
Because
Yeah.
they like to reduce
But it
them
just-
to like fleeting anecdotes. Like it's just like, oh, here's like what happened. That's it.
Yeah.
We're just moving
Right.
on.
They
I
don't
just
want to
think-
villainize
yeah.
themselves too much.
Right. It's just not. I just don't think that that's the correct way to go about it. Because me personally, Black American, I grew up like during the summers. My dad would give me reports to do on different Black people in Black history.
Yeah.
So like I know the history, and that did not supplement my knowledge of our history. And if I did not know anything about Black history, that would not have supplemented anything. It would just it just feels gross. And getting back to like Don said something earlier about like how things are shown to, or how bad things are presented to young people to tell them not to do it is like incorrect. Me personally, like again, this was said on a previous episode, but I was on Tumblr. I'm sorry. But
You said sorry twice, both times.
But like there was so much stuff about, and trigger warning, eating disorders. And at the time I didn't really know what that was.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of stuff being like, basically trying to talk people out of having eating disorders, but in doing that, they gave the steps of what to do or what people do when they have eating disorders, and lo and behold, you learn the steps,
Right.
and like again, added to like my knowledge of that now of like how to do all these things, and then like
doesn't go away.
I developed extreme anxiety and like clinical depression, and it's like 1 + 1 is 2. Now that I know what to do, I'm gonna do it. And it's like there's so much stuff like that where it's like they're telling you the message is don't do this, but then they're giving you the step by steps. Same thing with 13 Reasons Why. Why are we showing people how to the procedure of
Did they?
What
I didn't
occurred.
watch. I stopped watching 13 Reasons Why. I don't think I even finished the first season. But did they actually show?
Yes, they did. They
Okay,
removed
because
it,
I've watched
but they
things
did
like
show.
Downton Abbey. They had a scene where a man tried.
right.
Yeah, but they didn't show it. They showed the aftermath.
No,
But then-
it showed.
No,
That
showed the
terrible.
girl.
Yeah.
And that's directly. Why did Netflix do that?
No,
I'm
it's
suing
not just
Netflix.
Netflix. Like
Slash-
so many
I'm not
shows
really.
these days, like feel the need to show like all the graphic like
And be the
representation,
most graphic
Yeah.
as
and it's
possible.
like lasts for minutes, like not even like a brief second, like minutes. And I'm just like,
Like
how does
essay.
how does that how does that add to my understanding or the plot?
There was an
Right.
essay scene in 13 Reasons Why, which I believe
Many.
they removed.
Many.
But one of
There was
them
also
was bad.
Yes, it was very graphic, and it's just like that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Right.
13
Worth of
Reasons
stuff.
Why. That should
a
be a
minisode that's
minisode.
not a really
But just
minisode.
it's just and like what are we trying to teach people? Are we trying to teach people that this is bad? But like if then
We're
why are we
them
showing
the
it?
steps. We're showing them how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was a phase. There's probably still happening on TikTok, but on more minor scales. There were people who were getting hundreds of thousands of likes for showing what they ate as like a recovering from an ED, but they're still not eating quite regularly, and they still like they show the calories in the video and do all this stuff, and then those videos got a lot of traction, and
pop
I'm
up on our
luckily
For You
I didn't
page.
see those on my For You page straight up, but I saw a lot of people talking about them, being like, this is bad because it's showing people how to eat.
Basically a 101 how to have
Yeah.
an eating disorder.
Literally, and
Yeah.
it's terrible because I'm now 18. At the time, I was like 16, 15 experiencing that. There are young children on TikTok
Yeah.
who are told that you have, like, there's body checking on TikTok all the
Right.
time. Body checking is where you're deliberately showing your body to show, like, how skinny you are. And it's just, they're shown that at such a young age. I feel like when we were really young, the body checking we saw was, like, super skinny models in magazines and movies.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's
Yeah.
not perfect, but
You had to go look for it.
you had to look for those things. And technically, I have to look at TikTok whenever I open up my
Still.
phone and go purposely click on it. But it's such, like, the dopamine rushes you get from TikTok is in itself an addiction.
Yeah.
So people get so dependent on TikTok where they're constantly shown terrible things. And, like, I've seen people talking about, like, actual, like, nude images of people. I've seen 14-year-olds sexualizing themselves. And I was like,
That's
like,
social
what?
media.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. This next generation, I really, it's gonna be interesting in a Black Mirror kind of way
To see how they grow up.
Jinx.
Yeah, to see how they develop
That was
if they
not
can.
good. Yeah.
Because like I should be thankful that I freaking crawled out of the cesspit
Right.
of the internet in 2014 to 2016, and lo and
2018.
behold,
Okay.
it just gets worse.
Yeah.
There are things, not to blame you, that you have shown me that today you would have not have shown me. And that's just crazy because you're like, look at this cool thing. And it's like,
this thing I
this thing I stumbled upon. It's like a Reddit of
I
just,
have many memories.
I'm sorry.
It's
I already
ingrained in my head.
apologized. I'm sorry.
No, it's
you're canceled
The
now.
things that we have access to these days is just crazy. And if you're not mature enough to consume that information, you're just doomed.
It could really mess
and
you
forget
up.
just like it's literally I don't think people realize that the inherent trauma of being shown that stuff at such a young age. Like I loved My Little Pony when I was younger. And, yeah, I'm already done.
Oh my god.
I loved My Little Pony when I was younger. Unfortunately, a lot of grown adult men also really loved My
For
Little
the wrong
Pony
reasons.
for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
and so they put a lot of their
God. I know
favorite
exactly what you
content, on the internet. And so even me, a young girl who just liked a cartoon show for children.
Did I show you that one tattoo?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Like even me just trying to search for, Twilight Sparkle wallpapers because I had a computer and I wanted to look at Twilight Sparkle.
Her
like,
butt, like it's crazy. It's like that is a horse.
I wasn't gonna say it explicitly. But
I just said butt. Okay, I could have said a lot worse.
Okay. But it's like kids can't even go look for kids content anymore on the internet because it has been so tainted by just because they have to share the space with adults. Like literally. I mean, I remember going to Google search for school projects, looking up in elementary school we had a solar system project where we each got assigned a planet that we had to do a little presentation on. Kids searching up Venus.
Ooh.
And then drawings coming up.
Of the planet?
No, honey.
Maryan.
The goddess.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen those I've seen TikToks that are like how long it takes to find a sexualized character, sexualized
in
picture
like
of
2 seconds.
this
Right.
character, and they're scrolling down Instagram, Safari, whatever, and it's like their page. So think about that on a computer, like it's two pages next to each other. On a computer, you see it on like the second row.
Yep.
Could I
Like-
pose a question for you guys right
Yes.
now? So now I know, Bria, you were talking about how the information available to you and how kids searching up these things, and they're presented with this information that they shouldn't be seeing. I think that also kind of circles back to how parents blame, in reference to academics, parents blame their child's academic shortcomings, at least in my family, to phones or
Right.
technology.
And I don't think that's necessarily wrong because
But they're the parent. If I'm looking at
you have to
something-
regulate that.
Exactly.
And you have to teach your kid how to regulate that themselves because
That is true, but I feel like it depends on your child at the end of the day. too.
Yes.
Because sometimes you can try to regulate your phone, at least based on experience. My younger sister, she's not the best with
I can
regulating
relate.
her phone time and regulating her homework time. But whenever my parents take away her phone, her immediate defense mechanism is oh, why do you hate me so much? Why do you do this to me?
Right.
And then as a parent, you feel bad. You don't want your
Yeah.
child to say that. So then eventually, you're going to cave and you're going to give them back their phone. And at the end of the day, you accomplish nothing.
Right. My thing is just parents can only do so much, but I do
Yeah.
expect them to try.
Yes.
Because it is children are whatever
It's
they're gonna
hard
do.
because your parent has feelings too.
Yeah.
They're not just emotionless.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the way I experienced it in my family was at my dad's house. He would turn off the Wi-Fi and take our phones away, which when you're a child of divorced parents and communication is very fickle, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's not always constant. Finite, yeah. It's not constant, and it's, I don't know, having a phone to communicate with people is comforting.
Yeah.
And I'm sad. I'm pitying myself in the fact that I have a problem where I go on my phone far too often. But also there's moments where not having a phone is scary and it's stripping of your power that you have. But then again, I see parents handing their children, their toddlers, phones just so they don't have to deal with that. And that to me is also pitying. I pity those children because they're not even given attention. Their parents aren't putting it, not all parents, but they seem to not put in that energy to show their kid the world. They're just, here's this phone, you have access to everything.
Yeah.
But that's so limiting. A phone is so limiting because it only shows you things. It doesn't tell you how to experience it. Specifically with school, a lot of people are college is a scam. You don't need to go. Everything is accessible online. College and school should teach you how to process that information. And a lot of people, they don't have the motivation to go seek that information out themselves. But if they're paying for school, if it's something that they're required to go to legally, in high school, elementary, middle school, stuff like that, they have to be in that situation where they learn and they're told there is someone directing them, and there's so that I've learned a lot from the internet and stuff, but there's stuff that I needed to learn, and it's best that I learned that in person.
Yeah.
Like math and English and grammar and stuff like that. So
yeah.
it's unfortunate.
I think, in conclusion, it's pretty obvious that technology has had a huge impact on adolescents who are of school age these days, not just for improving, in a positive aspect, improving academics, like more access to learning resources, but in negative ways by decreasing their attention spans and just overall providing them with so much information that their brains don't know what to do with them anymore.
Your brain can't process
And their brain just can't process them. And unfortunately, a lot of parents these days don't seem to understand that this isn't their kids' fault. This is society's fault. Society's created this environment that has basically just, what's the word?
People have become so dependent on phones,
Yeah,
and I
people-
don't think that's necessarily wrong, but it definitely has its downsides.
Yeah, like Dime was saying, the dependency on technology has created this environment where kids just aren't able to put their focus in academics anymore as much as they should be, or their parents want them to be doing. And that, I guess, internal and external conflict is hard, and it causes a lot of mental health issues for kids that further deters them from being able to do well in school, and just, I guess, hurting their relationship with their parents. So with that, I'd like to thank Solano Community College for letting us using the TV studio, and thank you for tuning in for my episode.
Subscribe, comment, and like the video.
And turn on the notifications bell so you can
Yeah.
get notified every time we post.
And also
Yeah.
leave a comment. That'd be nice too.
And stay tuned for Bria's video coming out very soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you.
Toodles.
Bye.
Bye.